The G5 Hive. All G5, all the time.
Hello and welcome to the G5 Hive. We're live to you tonight. We've got episode 4 for us tonight, where we aim to bring you all of the honey and goods on G5 college football. Justice, me. What's up, Justice?
Not much, man. Just been watching some Monday Night Football. Some a lot of injuries tonight to the running backs. You know,
There have been
that Nick.
There have
Chubb
been a lot of
looked bad.
injuries. There's been a lot of injuries just in week 2 in general. You've got Joe Burrow with the calf. You've got, I think, Calvin Ridley had a bruise or like leg bruise. You got
Saquon out a couple weeks with a sprained ankle.
Yep. There's just been kind of a lot of them piling up here in week 2.
That Chubb injury was pretty gruesome, though. That was pretty gruesome.
Yeah, I saw one video of it, and I didn't need to see any more.
Yeah, that could be a career ender for him, sadly.
So I've been pretty busy. My oldest had some football tonight, and then went to the gym afterwards. So it's been a busy Monday night here.
Yeah, I spent most of my day scoring college IDP for how many leagues did I do today? 1, 2, 4, 5 leagues, I think. So yeah, fun times.
I'm sure your league mates appreciate that, because that's not easy. Not easy work.
No, I built a tool to help do it, but it probably still takes me a good, I don't know, 45 minutes a league, even with my tool, just to kind of organize it the way it needs to be organized and all that kind of stuff. But otherwise, I mean, without that tool, it would take me literally
weeks.
It would take weeks. It would take me probably 2-ish hours a league at least.
Gotcha.
I've done it. I did it before, like 2 years ago, and then last year I was like, "Hey, I'm not doing this again." I'm spending 8 hours, just sitting there hand scoring IDP, using a spreadsheet, but still having to look up every single stat. And so, last off season I built something to automate the process as much as possible.
Well, that's our intro. That's all we got today. Sorry for being kind of boring for you guys here, but we're going to give you what the swarm needs to know, our news and notes here from around the G5. And I want to start it off with some news that broke today. Army has agreed to extend Coach Jeff Monken through 2027. The new deal will pay him on average more than $2 million annually. So he's been making, he's had several 8-win seasons here and making bowls, and they just had a pretty good win last week. So I think good fit there for Army, extending Coach Monken. Any thoughts or opinions on that, Justice?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as far as triple option coaches go, he's one of the best. And, there really aren't many anymore. I mean, Monken used to be at Georgia Southern, and that's kind of where, I really knew him from back when ODU and Georgia Southern were in the FCS. We played them in the playoffs 2 years in a row, and that was in the Taylor Heineke days. And those were some very exciting and fun games. Neither team played defense worth a lick. And it was literally whoever had the ball last won the game. Because, it was just, if you're a fan of offense and scoring, that's what it was. They couldn't stop the passing attack of ODU and Heineke, and ODU couldn't stop the rushing attack of Georgia Southern. So, unfortunately for us, Georgia Southern came on the better end of both of those games. But, hey, it was exciting stuff.
Well, tale of two Georgia Southerns. Now they pass the ball a whole bunch.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There aren't other than I can't really think of any other triple option teams other than the service academies anymore.
Yep, I think that's about it.
I mean, I'm sure there's some maybe in FCS, but there's no more FBS teams that are running it.
Yeah. You talked about ODU. Segue right into our next point. Harvey rebounds after only playing on one punt coverage snap in week 2. Were you at the game this week?
I was at the game. So I was really nervous at first because I believe the first series Harvey wasn't out there. And then I saw him out there on a punt coverage team again, and I'm like, "Oh crap, here we go again." He's still in the doghouse. But then they put him in on offense, and he definitely announced his presence. He had like 3 catches for like 169 yards, I think, and a touchdown. Um, yeah, he's, in my opinion, he's clearly the most talented receiver on the team. However, they are intent on rotating wide receivers. So,
So don't go out and put him in your lineup, is what you're saying.
unless you're in a best ball league, I just don't really know how you're going to start him on a weekly basis. I mean, it'd have to be like a Sun Belt only league or something, because I just don't know. I mean, like I said, talent's there. He is their best receiver in my opinion, but if they're going to rotate like they have been, all season, then I just don't know how you're going to trust them. I mean, in all honesty, though, he should have had, I would guess, 5. He should have had 5 catches, and he would have gone well over 200 yards. He dropped the pass in either the third or fourth quarter that would have been a touchdown, and then he was wide open on a play, and Grant Wilson, and it would have been like a 70-yard touchdown pass, and Grant Wilson overthrew him by 5 yards. So
Ugh.
he would have had a heck of a day.
Yeah.
But he's not out there on every offensive series. They rotate the receivers a lot, so just keep that in mind. I know a lot of people, I feel like, went out on waivers and picked him up this week, and they play 2 things. They play Texas A&M Commerce this week, right? Well, that's an FCS team fairly new to FCS, and it wouldn't shock me that you see even more of a rotation, right? They get to a big lead. They kind of rest their players a little bit. They've had a pretty tough schedule so far, playing Virginia Tech, Louisiana, and Wake Forest. And then they got, conference play starting up the next week. And so it wouldn't surprise me if it's a heavy rotation, even heavier rotation this week. And the other thing is, the weather this week for the ODU game is not supposed to be pleasant. It's supposed to be tropical storm rain left over from that storm all day Saturday. So that could have an impact on the game as well.
Maybe bet your unders.
Yeah.
Well, we got some injuries that happened that we need to talk about. So FAU quarterback Casey Thompson left with a leg injury in the second quarter. Turns out he tore his ACL, so he will be out for the season.
So I guess Daniel Richardson's the starting
He's
quarterback
the guy.
now.
He is the guy. We'll see how that plays out. I really liked what Casey Thompson brought to the team. I don't know if it'll be a 1-for-1 replacement, but FAU was putting up some points. So
yeah, and LaJohntay Wester was, looking pretty stout. So hopefully Richardson can keep getting him the ball.
Then Tulane, no Michael Pratt here in week 3. There were rumors about a twisted ankle. There was rumors about a torn MCL. If it was an ankle, I would expect him to play, just kind of stay in the pocket. Torn MCL, I can see him not playing at all. Doesn't play at all. I'm on the side of it's probably the torn MCL.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully one day soon we'll get injury reports, right? Kind of like
the Big Ten,
like the Big Ten puts out every week. I think eventually we'll get there.
One day. And then we've got Liberty. Vaughn Blue, the notable freshman, was carted off. He landed on his shoulder and will be out, quote, a little while. So I don't know that you were necessarily banking on him this year, kind of a stash for next year, but definitely had some explosive plays here and there. So,
and they can, I think, the Liberty RB room with Vaughn Blue, Quentin Cooley, and Billy Lucas. Chadwell does like to spread the ball around, so that probably just means more carries for Lucas and Cooley.
Then we've got UTSA, no Frank Harris, and DeCloran Clark supposedly dressed, but still did not play. So UTSA has not been looking great this season. The Roadrunners have not been, what do you say, beep beep this year.
No, yeah.
We got Ball State. Just notable that Brady Hunt is still out. So Koziel is still the guy while Brady Hunt is out. UConn quarterback Joe Fangdiano will have shoulder surgery, so he's going to be out for the year. And then South Alabama Devin Volson done for the year with the torn ACL.
So Colin Lacey, fire him up.
Yep, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. We've got UL Monroe, Ben Wooldridge, who's been a staple part of our quarterback talk this year. He got injured early in the game, and Zion Chris came in and did pretty well.
And Chris is a true freshman, I believe.
So something to monitor there, because Ben Wooldridge is throwing the ball a lot and throwing for a lot of yards. So, again, not sure it'll be a 1-for-1, but you might get the volume there.
And Chris might be a little bit more mobile than Wooldridge.
So something to take a look at. The La Tech quarterback situation, Hank Bachmeier had a pretty significant shoulder injury in the game against North Texas, and Jack Turner came in to replace him.
And I thought he looked, decent at least, right? At least capable. So I would expect him. He's gonna, have to start for a few weeks.
And La Tech was throwing the ball around pretty good here lately too. So something to keep an eye on. Then we've got Middle Tennessee. Frank Peasant did not play on Saturday. Did not hear as to why, but something to monitor. / if you want to play him for whatever reason this week, hasn't really shown much yet, but they've been playing up, if I do recall correctly. Central Michigan quarterback Burt Emanuel sat out week 3. They said it was due to an illness, so something to monitor going into this next week, because we got some action starting up. Then we've got North Texas. You're going to have to help me with this name. Ikeka
Ragsdale, yeah, out for the season.
He's out for the season, and Chandler Rogers took all the snaps in week 3 here at quarterback, which is different.
Yeah, I expect Ayo Adeyemi, the running back, to kind of be the beneficiary there for North Texas. And I mean, he was already pretty productive, but it just kind of removes one of the backs out of the committee there. So, if you're desperate for a running back and he's available, he might get some more carries in that offense with the injury to Ragsdale.
Then we've got Southern Miss running back Frank Gore Jr. suffered a foot injury in the game versus Tulane this week. So, again, something to monitor this weekend. And we finally got a little bit of closure, I guess, with San Jose State's wide receiver Justin Lockhart. He's out for the season due to an arm injury, so it probably was a fracture. He had that cast on, so it probably wasn't one of those precautionary things. It was probably broken hand.
Yeah, it's like, why did they take so long to tell everybody, right? Everybody knew it was in a cast, and so.
Then a couple just things to be aware of. Wyoming running back Harrison Whaley made his season debut for Wyoming. 18 carries for 110 yards and 1 touchdown against Texas. So talk about starting the season off with a bang. Somebody that we will touch upon later in our running back.
Yeah. Also, Wyoming started quarterback Evans Svoboda.
Yep.
And he looked.
I think it was a shoulders injury there
with Peasley. Yes. I know from talking to some beat writers for Wyoming in the preseason when I was writing a team preview in Wyoming, that everyone was pretty high on Evan, and so it's good to see him get a chance. And it wouldn't shock me that while Peasley's out, that he kind of takes that job and runs with it. So I don't want to pump the kid up too much, but they were pretty much saying they felt like he was the most talented quarterback they've had since Josh Allen. So that's pretty high praise. Not not saying that he's going to be the next Josh Allen, but from a passing standpoint, they thought he was a much better passer than Peasley.
And then Fresno State, Sherrod came back and split reps with Gilliam. We talked about it here right away that Sherrod was hurt, so Gilliam got all the run there, and it was something as a watch out, as a lot of people grabbed Gilliam as he's been a workhorse back there for Fresno State. So something to monitor.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking maybe it is Gilliam's job, but I guess we'll see moving forward. One thing I didn't know and learned today is Gilliam's not even on scholarship. So
yep,
I'm sure he is earning a scholarship this after this season.
Yes, for sure. Let's see here. What other news do I have here? We've got East Carolina quarterback change, Alex Flynn, but he did not look too great. East Carolina just...
No, he threw 3 picks. And he came out of the game, and then they put Mason Garcia in, and then Flynn came back in. But I don't know. At some point, I wouldn't be shocked if they throw true freshman Raheem Jeter out there. He was a high recruit for East Carolina. And if Flynn and Garcia aren't going to get it done, they might throw the true freshman out there and just kind of see what he's got. At least they know what they got going forward.
And then a big piece of news here: Utah State announced that freshman McKay Hillstead is the starting quarterback this week, taking over for an ineffective Cooper Lagasse. Lagasse and Vaughn had a pretty nice connection. Granted, they weren't deep. He was getting a lot of
targets.
So I am cautiously optimistic. We'll see.
I mean, Hillstead threw 3 touchdowns this week, so
it is something to take notice of. I mean, you got Mountain West play getting going, so should be fun here with those conference games. Then we've got our G5 over P5 games. We've got Miami of Ohio over Cincinnati. Still getting used to Cincinnati not being in the G5. 31-24 in overtime. I think everybody in chat rooms that I was a part of was, hey, what was why am I blanking on his name? The wide receiver there that...
Gage Larvadane.
Larvadane. Everyone's been like, oh, where's he? He had that one first play from the scrimmage or whatever it was where he had a long touchdown and was pretty quiet the rest of the game. But here with the Maction starting, don't worry. He will bust out.
He will once again.
And then we've got Ohio over Iowa State, 10-7.
That's the controversial game, right? They called a field goal bad. That was actually good. I don't know how you messed that up.
Yeah. So I had a quad box on and I didn't hear. I saw the replay and saw that they made it, and they went to a commercial break and they came back and Iowa State had the ball on their own 20. So there must be some sort of rule that, because they reviewed it and then they threw 2 pass plays and scored a touchdown. So instead of it being 10-3, Ohio's ball coming back from break, it was 10-0, Iowa State's ball, and then in 2 plays they scored a touchdown. So it was 10-7. So I don't know.
I just don't know how a referee, I don't know how you missed that.
Yeah. Then we've got South Alabama over Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State go cycling through their 3 quarterbacks like a hockey shift. Doesn't seem to work for them against South Alabama here. As I mean, we're here to talk about G5, but I don't know what Oklahoma State's doing.
Yeah, this is like 2 years in a row where they haven't looked that great, right? Not not what we're used to under a Gundy offense, anyway.
Yeah,
They paid South Alabama like $330,000, something like that, and took the loss, right? So good on South Alabama. That not only did they get paid, they got the win too.
Well, hopefully they stayed in a nice hotel.
That's right.
So UNLV gets a win over Vandy, 40-30. That was a fun game to watch. I watched a little bit of that. It was
and didn't
Brumfield
got hurt, right? And then Maya Villa came in. So
yeah, that was one that we missed there at the beginning. He got landed on, kind of drove his right shoulder into the ground. Fresno State with a win over Arizona State, 29-0. Arizona State sat everybody, said they were hurt.
Yeah, so it was what Pine and Bourget played.
Yeah,
neither looked great.
Not G5, but FCS Sacramento State beat Stanford 30-23. Not great there, Bob. Not great there.
No, it's like the old head coach lost to his former team. So.
Mm-hmm. And then we got some so close this week. Colorado State. Everyone's talking about Colorado, but Colorado State takes Colorado to double overtime. Honestly, they should have won the game. And honestly, I think they should have gone for 2 after or in their first
overtime.
I'm also convinced that Coach Prime does not know the rules of overtime because they won and decided to take the ball. Usually you go on defense. And so
that was one thing that confused me, though, because I thought whatever you picked the first overtime, then it flipped. Is that not the rule anymore?
No. So it's you get the choice. So Colorado got the choice. They chose to take the ball first. So then the second overtime is now Colorado State's choice, and they chose to play defense.
Okay.
So you do alternate, but you alternate people picking.
You alternate choice.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And typically you're going to play defense. So I am convinced that Coach Prime did not know the rules or any of the players because I don't know why you would. I mean, I guess they were rolling. Maybe they wanted to keep it going. But anyways.
The game should never went to overtime. Colorado State should have won that game in regulation, in my opinion.
And then Old Dominion almost knocked off Wake Forest 27-24. What was it like to be there in that second half? I mean, they were cruising.
It was brutal.
The first one.
Brutal. So many people were pissed off. I wasn't actually really that mad because, I didn't expect them to have a chance to win the game, right? So I was super encouraged by how well the defense played in the game. The defense played light years better than they did the two previous weeks. But in the second half, the Wake Forest adjustments on defense, we had no answer. I believe we had something like 24 total yards of offense in the second half.
Yeah, it was not very
good. It was bad. Now, again, like I said, we did have 2, Harvey dropped a touchdown, and then Wilson overthrew Harvey on what would have been a touchdown also. So, I mean, they could have and should have won the game, but man, it was a brutal second half. The offensive line couldn't block. Wake Forest had 10 total sacks in the game, and the majority of those were in the second half. On the game-winning touchdown for Wake Forest, it was a sack, and Grant Wilson fumbled, and they got the ball to like the 8-yard line, and then later they scored later. That would end up being the difference in the game. ODU missed 2 field goals in the game too, so it was encouraging and then frustrating at the same time, just from a standpoint like that they should have won the game, but it was encouraging that they played so well against the ACC schools. So,
well, that does it for our sweet nectar this week. Or no, that's our topics. What am I talking about? I don't even know what I'm talking about here, Justice. That's what the swarm needs to know. We'll get to the nectar here soon.
Yes.
But we've got our players of the week. So I chose, so if you're, listen to it on a podcast tomorrow, go back and check out some of the graphics Justice has put together. But my player of the week here was Darren Granger from Georgia State. They pull out a 41-25 win over Charlotte. He had 466 yards passing and 3 touchdowns, along with 23 on the ground and 1 touchdown. So pretty nice showing there for Darren Granger, and he's been pretty accurate. Not too many incompletions this year. I think he's got a quarterback rating around like 180, 184, something like that. No interceptions, knock on wood. Playing great football is Darren Granger right now.
Yes, he is. He did very well for me in a couple of leagues where I started him. So he had like 40 some points, I think. Fantasy.
Shout out Darren Granger.
All right. So my player of the week, also a quarterback, was Caden Salter, number 7 for the Liberty Flames. They beat Buffalo this week 55-27. He had 344 yards passing, 5 passing touchdowns to go along with 66 yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown. And in most of my leagues, he was in the 50-point range. And most of those points were on my bench. I don't think I started him anywhere. I didn't have I might have started him in one spot, but other leagues where I have him, I didn't start him. Instead, I shame on me for starting Tyler Shook and Donovan Smith, who combined got me like a whopping 15, 16 points, something like that. It was bad, but yeah.
Houston's been rough, and Texas Tech has been rough.
Yeah, but Caden Salter, man, had a monster game this week, and we talked about him last week on the show that he's not necessarily getting the volume, but he's being super efficient, and the Liberty schedule it's super easy.
Charmin soft.
It is Charmin soft, and so I just feel like Salter is kind of this is kind of like a preview of things to come for the season for Salter.
Yeah, and if you need help with picking quarterbacks, there is a podcast and YouTube show called the G5 Hive that talks about all G5 guys, so you don't have to worry about starting those Power 5 guys, Justice.
That's right. I should listen to my own advice sometimes, I guess. But I don't think you have to worry about me starting Donovan Smith over Caden Salter anymore the rest of this year.
Absolutely not. Now we're going to get into the nectar, or the good stuff here. That is week 3 in review, and where we kind of our quarterbacks here is what Justice is going to talk about. And we've got our buckets. We've got our top 20 players in attempts, and then we look at the top 20 in yards per game. And if they hit both of those buckets, these are the guys that give you those volumes and the yards, which will get you points. So these are the guys that if they are not rostered in your leagues, you need to pay attention to. Otherwise, if they are rostered, and maybe you have some of them, these guys are plays that you need to play each week.
So unlike previous weeks, I'm not going to regurgitate all these statistics to you. So hopefully, if you're listening on YouTube, listening on podcast, go back and find our YouTube or Twitter video. And, we have graphics that show all the stats, the rankings, etc. I'm just going to spend a little bit more time talking about the actual players themselves. So for quarterbacks, we're looking at volume. So we're looking at two things here, and that these guys are the top 20 in attempts per game and yards per game. If they check both of those boxes, then they make this list, and we bring them to you each week. Number one, he hasn't been number one all season, but certainly someone that I would have expected to be number one before the season started, and that's Davis Brin, Georgia Southern. As we talked previously, they've gone from a triple option, run the ball all the time offense to a spread them out, throw the ball all the time offense. And, he's number one in attempts, second in yards per game. And with conference play starting up, and them not playing any more Power 5 schools, I just expect that trend to continue and be, on the up and up for Georgia Southern. The next guy up is Mikey Keene, Fresno State, second in attempts, third in yards per game. He's looked outstanding for Fresno State, kind of just stepped in right where Jake Hayner left off. I know a lot of people were preseason, there was some skepticism whether he was actually even going to be the starting quarterback, but I think he's, more than answered all those concerns. And, he'll be their starter moving forward, teaming up with Eric Brooks there in Fresno State. Next up, this guy kind of dropped a little bit from previous weeks, but they played Oregon, so that should have been expected. I know I set all my Hawaii shares this week just because of the tough matchup. But Braden Shager, Hawaii, he's third in attempts, seventh in yards per game. He very well could be number one. Now they're getting to Mountain West play. I expect that run and shoot offense just to continue clicking. And he's probably a start from here on out.
I am starting them up this week in several leagues. They play New Mexico State, I believe, this week. So I will be firing up my shares.
Next up, Cole Schneider, Buffalo. The team they're one of the winless teams, I believe. I think there's like 7 or so winless teams in all of FBS. Buffalo is one of them. But, not having such a great year, that's certainly led to more volume for Buffalo. And I expect that trend to continue. Cole Schneider's fourth in attempts, 16th in yards per game. And with Maction, they're going to need to score to keep up with these other teams. We've talked about this weekend, the last 2 weeks with this guy, Jacob Zeno at UAB. I'm really shocked, kind of like that he is there, but new head coach, new offense, and they're slinging it around, man. He's fifth in attempts, and he's the top G5 quarterback in terms of yards per game. And see if that continues as they move into to conference play. Another quarterback that kind of took a hit this week because they played a Power 5 school, and that's Austin Reed, Western Kentucky, where they played Ohio State this week. But he's 6th in attempts and 10th in yards per game. Austin Reed and Western Kentucky, much like Liberty, are in Conference USA, which is, in my opinion, the weakest conference in the G5. And so those guys are going to eat moving throughout the rest of the season. Next up, E.J. Warner at Temple, 7th in attempts, 13th in yards per game. Temple's kind of picked up where they left off, slinging the ball around. Not necessarily great results in terms of wins there, but great for fantasy owners. And E.J. Warner owners, David Martin Robinson, Ahmad Anderson, Dante Wright. Next up, Preston Stone, SMU, 9th in attempts, 11th in yards per game. SMU, we know SMU likes to air it out. Preston Stone's kind of been the most valuable piece, I think, of that offense as they spread the ball around a whole lot to the receivers. Curley did get a couple touchdowns this week, but he still didn't have a lot of catches. So if you're looking for some piece of the SMU offense, Stone is definitely the man to own. Next up, a new quarterback to the list. I think he was maybe on the list week 1 and he dropped off last week, but he's back on the list, and that's Gunnar Watson at Troy. He's 11th in attempts per game and 18th in yards per game. Next up, I actually watched this guy play this past week, and he got hit a lot in the game against Navy, and that's Seth Hennigan for Memphis. He does rank 13th in attempts and 12th in yards per game. We'll see if they can keep that up as they move into American Athletic Conference play. But they got to do a better job of protecting Hennigan, or he's going to get hurt.
Yeah, it was also, I mean, a rough game to watch. I thought they should have won. Or no, they did. They ended up pulling it out. They just didn't cover my money line bet. That's what it was. But yeah, Memphis has just been fun to watch on offense.
They have been. The one thing that was very clear to me in that game is that Blake Watson's their best offensive player. And he's done a whole lot with very few touches. And I just feel like they've got to get him more touches than they've been doing.
I feel like they're starting to realize that, because the first few drives of that game, he got in there and they threw the ball a lot to him, and like that first drive they just marched down the field and scored a touchdown, and then they went away from him for like 3-4 drives before getting back to him.
Yeah. Hopefully moving forward, I mean, he's clearly their best weapon on offense, I feel like. All right, next up is a new guy, a new quarterback to the list, and if he's available in your leagues, I'd go scoop this kid up. He's playing in a Jay Norvell offense, and quarterbacks have been known to produce pretty big numbers in that offense, and that's Braden Fowler Nicolosi. He took over for Clay Millen, and I thought he looked really good in the game. I was very impressed with him. I think Clay Millen's days at Colorado State could be done, or at least his days as the starter. Maybe I guess he can't really transfer. He has to sit out, right? Because he already uses one-time transferring from Nevada.
Yep.
So maybe he'll hit the books really hard and become a grad transfer. I'm not sure, but he looked much. Nicolosi looked much better than I had seen Millen look in that offense, and so it's his team moving forward. In my opinion.
And shout out, I mean, we didn't give him Player of the Week, but Torrey Horton. I mean, everybody knew he was getting the ball, and he still got the ball.
Yes.
Pretty crazy game.
Yes. And then the last guy that was in the top 20 in both attempts and yards per game, and this one is shocking, right? Because it's Florida International Keon Jenkins, freshman at Florida International, and he's got that offense humming. And Florida International, I would have said like is one of the worst teams in all of FBS, and it's amazing what a good quarterback can do for a team. But he's 20th in attempts per game, but 5th in yards per game. So. Excited to see what he can do. They play in Conference USA. Again, that's a fairly weak conference. And so, if Jenkins is available in a league, and it's a fairly deep league, he's got, in its dynasty, he's got,
several years of
3 more. So, definitely someone, I might be interested in, especially if, I need some help in that quarterback room. And that's, those are our quarterbacks that check the 2 boxes for 20 attempts, as well as top 20 in attempts and top 20 in yards per game. There was only 12 quarterbacks this week. Last week it was 15, but we did have the 3 new guys this week in Gunnar Watson, Braden Fowler Nicolosi, and Keon Jenkins.
All right. Well, I will take over the running backs. So again, we're looking at volume. Touchdowns aren't a sticky stat, but you can count on volume. So if you are getting, again, same concept, top 20 in touches per game, so your rushes and receptions, and then top 20 in total yards per game. That means you're getting us points. So if you're in top 20 in those two buckets, you make the list. So we've got 2 new guys to this list from last week, but we've got Rasheen Ali from Marshall taking and how I have these, if you're watching in YouTube, I have these ranked based off of to see that the touches don't go in order. It's then based off of fantasy points, because that's what we want. We want the most fantasy points. So these guys then are ranked total touches, your total yards, and fantasy points. So we've got Rasheen Ali, number 1. He's ranks 5th in touches with 20 and 6th in yards with 131.5. Ashton Genty at Boise State. He's at 21, 3rd in touches, 125.3, and 3 in total yards. Halani's been out. Ashton Genty's been eaten. It's going to be hard to put the toothpaste back in, not a bottle, the tube.
Put the horse back in the barn after he's gotten out.
Yeah, honestly, put the Ferrari,
the Bronco.
The Bronco, or take the Ferrari. You can't put it back in the garage now. He's out, and he's just got to be out there all the time because he's just so dynamic and brings a lot to this Boise State team. And they're starting their Mountain West action, so he should be a staple in all your lineups. Marcus Carroll, Georgia State. He ranks 2nd in touches and 7th in total yards, and he's been a bully on the ground. I'm excited to see what he continues to do this year with Georgia State. They've been putting together a pretty solid season here. Then we talk about Blake Watson for Memphis, 18.6 total touches, ranks 8th, and 141 yards per game, ranks 5th. So like you said, he's putting it all together. I did a little write-up about how I thought he was a kind of a dark horse guy. I think we talked about it week 1 or week 0. I'm not sure which one it was, but talked about his being in high school. He was a receiver and got switched to running back at Old Dominion. So you're seeing a lot of those catches out of the backfield, and it's helping out there at Memphis. Then we've got the guy that ranks in most touches at 26. That's Nate Noel, App State. They like to run the ball. He's been churning it up. Also, 1st in yards per game with 150, just lacking the touchdowns. But overall, volume monster. Then we've got a new guy to the list, Harrison Whaley from Wyoming. So he was an NIU transfer, originally from Johnston, Iowa, I'm originally from Ankeny, Iowa, where J.J. Cole's from, went to my high school. But Harrison Whaley played in our conference and went to NIU. Now he's over there at Wyoming. Pretty solid game there. Only 1 game sample size, but you can see he had 18 touches for 110 yards. He's already breaking the top 20. Yep. So
it was pretty stout competition too. So
then another new name here is Kayron Lynch Adams from UMass and the Minutemen. Again, one of those teams that probably thought we're going to be one of the worst teams in the nation, and hey, they're not actually that bad. They can move the ball. That's about as much as I can say about the Minutemen. But he has an 18 total touches, ranks 6th, and 102.5 yards per game, ranks 6th. So Malik Jackson at Jacksonville State is next. Then we've got Elijah Gilliam at Fresno State. I think we're having a butting of the heads, so we'll see how this plays out. I think Sherrod comes back and eats into the volume. Justice is on the side of, hey, I think this might be Elijah Gilliam's.
I hope it's Sherrod because I have him in a couple spots, but I'm thinking maybe it's not. He's just going to be more of a change of pace. But hey, we'll see.
And then we've got the electric freshman Jalen Buckley there at Western Michigan. And then
Buckley, his numbers have come down significantly since week 1, but they played some pretty tough competition, and so hopefully with the Maction coming up, he can get back on.
I'm so
track.
excited to watch the Mac this year. 2 years ago, it was electric. Last year, it was kind of a disappointing year in general watching the Mac, and I'm excited. I'm excited to watch the Mac.
I think it's going to be back to Maction, to true action Maction.
The game that I really want to see is Toledo and Ohio, because Toledo's got a pretty good defense. Ohio's got a pretty good defense. Putting that together, I just watched a deal about the what they call it, 12% or 15% rule. Did you see this, Justice?
No, I didn't.
So Ohio brought in a theme. I think it's 12%, where you've got like fumbles, interceptions, sacks, and then like 2 other things, and you divide your total plays by that, and it's supposed to be less than 12%. If it's less than 12%, then you've given yourself an 88% chance to win the game.
Nice.
So it was something interesting. If you want to go check it out, I'll try to find it and post it on our Twitter. So then a last guy here is Kamani Vidal Troy. So we've got a team that's throwing the ball a lot, and he's also getting 18.3 touches per week, which ranks 10th in the G5, and 143.3 yards, which ranks 4th. So he's just not getting all the touchdowns there in Troy. But those are, the guys running back wise that you need to know. And again, take notice there for Harrison Whaley, K'Ron Lynch Adams, as 2 new guys who have hit the graphic this week.
All right, moving on to the wide receiver. So last week we had a total of 12 wide receivers that checked both boxes. This week we're down to 10, but we do have 2 new guys this week. So I talked about them earlier. The first player I want to talk about is LeJontay Wester, Florida Atlantic. He is number 1 in targets and number 10 in yards per game. As we said before, Casey Thompson is out for the year. Daniel Richardson will be moving in. And so we just hope that Wester can keep up this torrid pace here and get some chemistry with Daniel Richardson. Now, Richardson was in camp well before Casey Thompson, so it's not like the receivers don't know, haven't really played with him much, and he was expected to be the starter until Casey Thompson transferred in. So I hope and expect maybe it'll be somewhat of a seamless transition, but stay tuned to that. The next player Luke mentioned earlier, who had an outstanding game this week, and that was Torrey Horton, Colorado State. Like Luke said, like everyone knows, he's getting the ball, and they just couldn't stop him. He is second in targets with 14 per game and 4th in yards. With the Mountain West Conference starting up, and no more P5 teams on the schedule, I just expect lights out here for Mr. Horton. Next up, Eric Brooks, who I mentioned earlier, with his quarterback also in the top producers list here. And I think you'll notice that as a theme. Almost not all of them, but over half these receivers, their quarterbacks are also in the top 20. So, but Eric Brooks, Fresno State, he's clearly the number 1 option there for Fresno State. He is 3rd in targets, 2nd in yards per game. Next up, Joshua Cephas, UTSA. Even with Frank Harris out, right? Cephas had a good game for UTSA. It'd be interesting to see when DeCorian, or JT, I think as he's going by now, Clark, returns, how that's going to impact Cephas and what he's doing as far as targets and yards. But for right now, he is 6th in targets, 15th in yards per game. Next up is a new player, Eric McAllister. Boise State, who had an outstanding game this past week. He ranks 7th in targets and 18th in yards per game. And Mr. McAllister was available in a lot of waivers in my league, so check your waiver wire to see if he's available there. Next up, Doran Burgess, Georgia Southern. Him and Caleb Hood are two guys that kind of run neck and neck, but right now Burgess is kind of the man, similar to like last year. Burgess is averaging 9.7 targets, 91 yards a game. And again, I'll expect that to continue as they get into Sunbelt play. Next up is our only other new wide receiver to the list this week, and that's Louis Brown IV at Colorado State. It'll be interesting to me to see kind of how it plays out between him and Justice Ross Simmons.
I was expecting more from Justice Ross Simmons. He got a lot of targets, didn't have a lot of catches.
So it'll be interesting to see kind of how it plays out between those two moving forward, right? Louis Brown IV was also another waiver popular waiver guy in most of my leagues this week, as he was not rostered, but he ranks 10th in targets and 11th in yards per game. Keep in mind that Colorado State's only played 2 games so far to this point, as they had a bye the week before. Next up is Luke's guy, Sam Pinckney out Coastal Carolina. He's still kind of living off that big week 1, but him and Brown both seem to be viable plays on a weekly basis for Coastal Carolina. But Pinckney ranks 12th in targets and 16th in yards. This guy was much higher up prior to this week, but again, we talked about the quarterbacks. Hawaii played Oregon, and so while Ashlock didn't he had a decent game, but it wasn't.
I think he had in one PPR. I think he had like 11 or 12 points.
It wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible, but it was not it's not what we've grown to see from him in the previous weeks. But as Luke said, they're playing New Mexico State this coming week, so wheels up for Mr. Ashlock. Next up, Gage Larverdane, Miami, Ohio. As Luke alluded to earlier, not necessarily the best game from him this week, but I fully expect that he will pick those numbers back up with Maxion starting. He is number 1 in yards per game with 144.3, and so fully expect that to continue with Maxion coming up. And then last on this list, who we've talked about a couple times, just due to the injury to Devin Vosen, Colin Lacey is going to be the man, and I think you can expect his numbers to just increase as they move forward. If there is a negative, I feel like South Alabama's pretty much been in control of their games to this point, so they haven't had to sling it around a lot. We'll see what happens moving forward as they get into Sunbelt play. But Mr. Lacey is 18th in targets, but 5th in yards at 101 yards per game. And so those are the 10 receivers that are in the top 20 volume in terms of targets and yards per game for the G5. And now we're going to move over to Luke to talk about the tight ends.
Everyone wants to hear about the tight ends so much. Everyone's been hurt by tight ends. We've got Gadsden, Liz Frank injury.
Luke
Lachey, I believe he's got a torn ACL. There's been a lot of injuries here in the college football landscape. So here are some names that maybe can help you out. So I'm going to add in, I'm going to roll right into waivers along with the tight ends. So here, if you're watching, you'll see the name, school, targets, yards per game, ADOT, points per game that they're averaging, and then their rostership. So only 2 of these guys of the 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 that I have here are rostered more than 30%. So I do not have rostership next to them. So they should be taken in your leagues, but always go and check to make sure somebody hasn't overlooked them. So these are ordered targets per game, yards per game. Then I want to look at the ADOT because I want to see, are they just getting dump offs or are they actually running routes? And then again, points per game I have there. So I ordered these starting with targets per game, yards per game, and then actual receptions. So if you're in the top 20 for the tight ends in those two buckets of targets and yards per game, you made the list. That's what we want. We want volume and we want yards, so we want the points. And then, like I said, I ordered these based off of receptions because obviously targets are great, but I need you to catch the ball to get me more points. So, number one, Dallin Holker, Colorado State, had a huge game. I don't think this is a surprise name, but I was surprised to see that he's only 29% rostered, so he meets our threshold of 30% or less rostered, and he's averaging 21.3 points per game. Kind of buoyed by this last week, but he can ball out. Then we've got Tanner Colzel. Then Ball State with Brady Hunt out, he's still the guy. He's getting 7.3 targets per game and averaging 48.3 yards per game. Good for 12.33 points per game. He's rostered more than 30%, so I do not have a number for him. Just go out, check. A new tight end to the list this week, Marshall's Cade Conley, averaging 5 targets per game, 57 yards, 6.8 ADOT, good for 10.2 points per game. His rostership percent is 6. If I can get 10 points out of my tight end, I'm pretty happy right now. And they got a lot of injuries, like I said, so I would maybe look at Cade Conley this week. You've got J.J. McAfee from Georgia Southern. You've got Bryn throwing the ball around. Hey, he's another option. 5.6 targets per game, 35 yards per game. Not a lot. ADOT 6.3, so he's actually running something. He's averaging 10.5 points per game. His rostership is 13%. Another guy who's not eligible for the waivers, but go out and check, is Mark Redman. SDSU, he's averaging 5.25 targets per game, 46 yards per game, and 9.1 ADOT. So he's getting down the field. That's only 0.2 yards behind Dallin Holker's 9.3. And he's giving you 11.48 points per game. Two new guys here coming up for this week. We've got Justin Jolly from UConn, 6.3 targets per game, 41.3 yards per game, 7.9 ADOT, giving you 7.3 points per game. His rostership is 3%. This next guy is only rostered in 1%. And again, his quarterback's on the list. That's Bryce DeMoss out of UAB, only getting 4 targets a game, but 36 yards. He's kind of getting some dump offs at 4.8, but he's getting you 9.6 points per game. Then a guy that I really like here is Harold Fannin Jr., Bowling Green State. 5 targets a game, 48 yards, 5.2 ADOT, gives you 10.5 points per game, and his rostership is at 20%. So he's got several years of eligibility left, so a guy that I like there. University of Louisiana Lafayette, Neil Johnson is rostered in 1% of leagues. 6 targets, but he's not bringing in a lot of targets. So down here, it's like, hey, buyer beware. 32 yards per game, 5.4 ADOT. He's getting you 6.5 points. Hey, it's something. We're digging deep.
Yeah.
Then a guy that I'm kind of intrigued by, he's got an ADOT of 10.7, but he's only getting 30.3 yards per game. He's getting almost 5 targets a game at 4.6. Rostered in 1% of leagues. He's getting you 6 points a game, but Trey Watson from Fresno State, again, another guy whose quarterback is in that 2020 bucket. So he might be somebody to watch. Maybe not pick up yet, but watch. And Neil Johnson, again, is one of those watches. And then David Martin Robinson, he's in 21% rostered. He's averaging just about 8 points per game, 7.93. He's getting you 5.3 targets. He's just not always bringing them in. That's the tough part here with David Martin Robinson. But he's getting 42.7 yards per game and running routes at an ADOT of 10.4. So he's getting down the field. So that's what you want to see. And again, his quarterback is in the 2020 bucket. Then we've got Jeremy Tate Jr. He's new to the list at a Middle Tennessee State. He's averaging 4.6 targets per game, 43 yards, an ADOT of 7.8, 9.3 points per game, and 0% rostership. So these are definitely in the mud. I would probably Neil Johnson, Trey Watson, David Martin Robinson, Jeremy Tate Jr. Just kind of wait. I mean, I can see if you want to take David Martin Robinson, but I think my cutoff there is Harold Fannin Jr. at Bowling Green. Thoughts on any of the tight ends there, Justice, and rolling right into those waivers?
So the only tight end that kind of on your list that I would maybe throw a little bit of a word of caution is JJ McAfee, because Upshaw is there from Kentucky, and he did get some run this past week. And I thought he looked really good, Keaton Upshaw. I thought he looked really good in the spring game. So I'm wondering maybe if them two kind of cannibalize each other, for lack of a better word. But I mean, to me, it's criminal that Holker is not 30% owned. That's the same with Fannin. I feel like they're going to be, two top 10 potentially tight ends in all of CFF, by the end of the year. So I'm kind of shocked that those two guys are still on the list. And Holker's a big dude, I didn't realize how big he was until I watched the game this past week. And
fast.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got some future NFL potential.
Yeah, so those are, the tight ends that meet our 2020 bucket, and for the G5, and then there are waivers, because they're kind of a lot of them are available. So just want to add those in it. Justice, you want to take it away on your waiver wire targets for wide receivers?
Yeah, so I got, I think, 7 or 8 receivers here to kind of mention that are less than 30% owned on Fantrax. And the first guy, he wasn't in our top 20 bucket this week, but he was last week, and that's Jamal Bell, Nevada, averaging 16.2 points per game in a 1 PPR league. His rostership is up from 12% to 15%. But he is their clear number one target there for Nevada. This next guy, I fully expect him to be 30% or more next week. He jumped from 16% to 23% this week. And with the injury news about Devin Vosen, Colin Lacey's he's the man for South Alabama, averaging 22.7 points per game, and I fully expect he will be. He won't be on this list next week. I expect he'll be over that 30% mark. Another guy who was in our top 20 bucket last week for wide receivers, but then kind of dropped off the list this week was Dante Wright at Temple. 11% up from 9% last week, 13.6 points per game. This next guy had a monster week for Georgia State, and that's Robert Lewis. We've talked about him previously and stepping into that Jamari Thrash role as the wide receiver 1 for Georgia State and for Darren Granger. He's only owned 13% of leagues, averaging 25.23 points per game. This next guy who's on a bye this week, so I don't know that he's and he's right there almost at 30%, at 26% owned. So he might not get there this week because of the bye, and that's Jamori Macklin at North Texas. 19.
Yes, he is related to Jeremy Macklin.
Are they brothers or?
I believe cousins.
Okay.
But there's a relation.
He's averaging 19.6 points per game. But again, like I said, North Texas is on a bye this week, so I don't know that he's going to get over that 30% this week. Next up is this. We talked about. I talked about him when we did the in our top 20, and he fit both buckets there. And that's Lewis Brown, the fourth, Colorado State. As I mentioned when I talked about him in our top producers, he is available pretty much in every waiver wire. He is only 1% owned, and he is averaging 18.3 points per game. And the last receiver I want to talk about, I also previously mentioned in our top 20. So he checked both of those boxes, and that's Eric McAllister out of Boise State. He's only 2% owned, and he is averaging 16.93 points per game. So all those guys, if they're available and you need wide receiver help, they all should, be rostered.
The Dante Wright one kind of surprises me. I figured he'd be more owned, but I did fact check, and yes, Macklin is the cousin of Jeremy Macklin. So.
Nice. And he was at Missouri. He transferred down right to North Texas last season. So
all right,
on to the running backs.
My running back waiver ads are Karen Adams, UMass. We talked about him on the 2020. He's getting the volume. He's got 19 touches per game, 102.5 yards per game, 16% owned, and 16.35 points per game. Kalen Black, JMU, 14.6 touches per game, 98.6 yards per game, 8% owned, good for 13.93 points per game.
The one thing I'll say about Black is I think he's the most talented running back, but they're sharing the ball there with him and Tyson Lawton, and it looks like Lawton might be the goal line guy.
And then we've got Kentrell Bullock, South Alabama, 14.6 touches, 73.6 yards per game, 1% owned, good for 11.4 points per game. So here are the running backs. I'm looking for about a week or something from you. Give me 10 points and I won't be too upset. Gavin Garcia, Kent State, 19 touches per game, 79.3 yards per game, 2% owned, and getting you 11.93 points per game. A guy that I really like is a freshman, Mekhi Hughes out of Tulane, getting you 15 touches a game, 72.3 yards per game, 7% owned, 9.73 points. So I mean, it's more of a deeper stash, but he's been getting a lot of good run here lately in games. And when they played Ole Miss 2 weeks ago, he got it all. So
Shady Clayton Johnson did get the start this week, but Hughes outperformed him. So
maybe more of a deeper stash. He could be serviceable this year, but maybe more of a next year guy. But Mekhi Hughes, a guy who's in our 2020 bucket, Malik Jackson, 16.3 touches per game, 98 yards per game, 24% owned, and gets you 15.43 points per game. And then Keith Willis, La Tech, 14% ownership, 11.4 points per game. He's only giving you 9.25 touches and 62 yards. So that's my hesitance. You're not getting a lot of touches there, but if you need something nasty, Keith might be your guy.
The concern I have with Willis too is he got a lot of run due to injury. And I think Thornton was back this week. I think Crosby is still out.
Yep.
So we'll kind of have to see how that running back room shapes up moving forward with those three-headed monster, so to speak.
But I'd say if you only get 4 waiver pickups, the only guy I would want to pick up is Karen Adams. But even with only 4 waiver pickups, I'm probably not utilizing them. But I think that's the only one I feel very confident in. And if you've got a waiver pickup that you are just holding on to, Mekhi Hughes might be somebody to look at towards the end of the season and see how he's performed. But if you've got unlimited waivers, I mean, this is for unlimited waiver pickups. Like I said, just trying to find about 10 points out there. Slim pickings on the waiver wire, under 30% this week. All right, Justice, you want to bring us home with quarterbacks?
All right. So all the points per game for these quarterbacks are based on 4 points for a passing touchdown. How Mikey Keene is still on this list is kind of surprising to me. Maybe he won't be next week, but last week he was 26% owned. He bumped up to 27 this week, so maybe he'll get over that 30% mark. But he's been consistently in our top 20 both buckets for the G5. He's averaging 18.3 points per game. This next quarterback is also on our list, and that's Jacob Zeno out of UAB. His ownership went up drastically over the previous week. So last week he was only 5% owned. He is now up to 17%, and he's averaging 25.21 points per game. As I mentioned earlier, he is the top yards per game quarterback in the G5. Next is Joey Aguilar at App State, taking over for the injured Ryan Berger, and he's played well. Berger might not get that job back, but Aguilar is up to 4% this week. He was only owned 1% last week, and he's averaged just under 24 points per game at 23.97.
And I could be mistaken, but I also don't believe he's thrown an interception yet, and his passing completion is up there pretty high for App State.
Yeah. This next guy, it totally shocks me that he's only 10% owned, and that's TJ Finley at Texas State. I mean, he's a starter in a pass-happy offense. He needs to be owned. I know a lot of people were high on Malik Hornsby, and Malik Hornsby did get some run this week, but that's because of their opponent, right? And so it was a blowout.
And boy, did he get run! Like he just ran the ball.
He ran. I mean, it's from a fantasy perspective. I can fully understand why people want to see Hornsby, right? Because of his rushing ability, he would be absolutely bonkers in that offense. But clearly, he's not the best quarterback in the eyes of Kenny and his staff. And Finley has done nothing wrong, and so I fully expect Finley to kind of be the man. Next up, this guy is zero. I'm assuming it's 0% owned simply because of a rounding thing, because I know he's owned in some leagues for sure. But that's Bryson Daly at Army. He's probably not going to give you anything super crazy, but with his rushing ability, he's going to be fairly consistent. He's averaging just a shade over 23 points per game. This next guy also, I'm kind of shocked that he's still only 22% owned, because when it comes time for action, he's
criminal.
He's gonna eat, man. He's gonna eat. Criminal. He can be a fantasy league winner, and that's Bert Emanuel Jr. at Central Michigan. His ownership did not go up over this past week. He's still only 22% owned. And he's only averaging 21.7 points per game, but they played a pretty tough non-conference schedule. You saw what he did in week 2 against the FCS opponent, and that's what I expect from him moving forward as we go into action.
Guys, we should not be talking about Bert Emanuel next week.
Yeah,
come on, let's pick
definitely should not. And these last two guys were both in our top 20 buckets, and that's Cole Snyder at Buffalo, only at 6% owned, averaging a shade over 21 points per game. And then this one really puzzles me. So Keon Jenkins at Florida International. Last week he was 1% owned. Well, this week, again, I'm sure it's a rounding thing, but he's 0% owned in Fantrax, and he's averaging the same as Snyder, just a shade over 21 points per game. And so, these guys that are in our top 20 buckets, for volume, they need to be rostered. And so, yeah, if you're looking for quarterbacks, I wouldn't be I guess if there was one guy, maybe I might be hesitant to spend a waiver wire pickup on, especially if it's limited, would be Bryson Daly at Army.
Yep.
But the rest of these guys are, if you're needing a quarterback, they're definitely worthy of being on a roster for sure.
Absolutely.
And they can help you on a weekly basis.
All these guys, I mean, with the exception of McKee at 18.3 points per game, like everybody's at above 20, and that's kind of like that threshold of like, you didn't lose me a week. That's what I need. But McKee's got a lot of upside here with Mountain West starting. But that is going to wrap it up for us tonight. That is the G5 Hive. Make sure you go out. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Please rate, review, and subscribe. You can find us on Twitter at G5 Hive. That's it. Next week we'll be going through. We're gonna go full bore with that sweet, so sweet nectar that we'll have from the G5 on the week 4 games, and bring you all of the news for you, our swarm, that we can find concerning the G5. That'll do it for us tonight. I'm Luke Probasco. That's Justice.
I'm Justice. You can find me at Justice_2318 on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. So,
I'm at Probasco Luke on Twitter. I mean, it says X, but then when you direct people to it, it still says Twitter. So I'm going to go with it still a tweet and in Twitter. But that'll do it for us tonight. I think I've said that about 3 times. Still working on this outro. Not sure how I'm going to rebound from this, but we'll see if I can rebound next week. Good night and buzz.
Buzz.